All right, how's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be looking at the Scarlet Chess Super Series tournament. This is the second arena qualifier. Our first arena qualifier was on December 28th. We got our three first participants for the qualifier, which will end in a OTB final. Really cool stuff. And today we're going to find out our um, last three people to play, and hopefully we'll have some nice, entertaining, fun games as we go on. The games are 5+3. And we're just gonna have to see how it goes. We've got a lot of players that I know from real life and a lot of players I'm not too familiar with. So we'll see exactly who comes out on top. We've got a good mix of a few older players and younger players too. So we're gonna see how it goes. So right now the first game up here is Shiamle versus Ekthroid. This is Liam Shea versus Zachariah Carlson. And let me pull up all the rest of these games for us to watch. I think this would be a nice one to start with. Well, they haven't started, so H4 by Kai Saxey. This is great. H4 and A4. This is amazing. Dark Sage replies in the most logical way with D5, E5. That game's going to be fun. Lei hasn't started. The game was abandoned in that one, so Zachariah starts off with a good point. This one started E4, E5, knight F3. We'll have Philidor with some F6 stuff going on, so might be some tricks along this diagonal eventually. Oh, yes, there definitely are now. With this pawn not being here, now this G6 pawn is never used to block if the queen was to come to H5 or something. And this could end quickly if black goes King F8. This is mate. And this already, this is also a mate. So a couple quick games to start us off. Back to this one. Kai Saxey versus Dark Sage. So pretty unorthodox opening here, but at least some people want to get out of theory pretty quickly, I suppose. B4, so a lot of space gained on this queen side. There are some weak light squares, and we're not so sure exactly where this king's going to go, because maybe this H4 pawn is not obviously well placed here. Maybe the plan is to play G3, Bishop G2, but black's going to try to play F5, because this queen side is definitely not somewhere that you would want to castle, I think. Okay. And it looks like Liam's back. He's a big Caro-Kann enjoyer. We get a standard position here with the pawns on E5 and D4. Bishop to G4. Pretty standard so far, nothing too special. And so far, yeah, so it looks like the bishop... I'm not sure about this development scheme here from white. I'm not a big believer. I feel like H6, or maybe you're looking for this fishing pole trap, but I'm not even a big believer in that, because I think maybe the queen comes here. Queen E8, a nice move, removing yourself from the pin. And now when F5 comes, this queen, kind of like in the Dutch and the King's Indian, becomes really, really interesting. And this bishop is honestly well developed. I mean, you could put it here, but this bishop eyes this nice diagonal. F5 is going to come. H5, I'm not a big believer in, because now this fishing pole thing never works, right? Like before, if we were to play H6 here, or if we were to play H6, possibly there was a chance to take there and open this rook. So looks like Liam Shea already won his game. Ah, I see. Nice little trick here. H3 takes. The knight comes back. The queen comes here, forgetting that the bishop can come here and skewer. Quick win for Liam, and that'll help him for sure. Back to this game. I find this game very interesting because, in my opinion, black is just doing so well. Again, eventually this F5 and E4, a very important move here. It kind of blunts F5. And okay, so he takes, and a lot of weak light squares. This bishop's really good. This rook now comes on the same diagonal as the king. And this position doesn't look too good for Kai Saxey here. C4. Seems like it hung the pawn. And the queen. So looks like Dark Sage is going to come through with this one. Queen up. White has all of these islands on the board. Doesn't look too promising yet. Okay, so we have Liam Shea here again. Now, this is an interesting setup he has. It looks like maybe this... Let's see what this came from. It looks like a Dutch. E6, B6. But yeah, we're starting to get some big clamp on the on the E4 square. D6 is here. Looks a lot like a Dutch. I like black's position. It doesn't seem like white starts where bishop has a home. It's not so obvious what white's plan is, especially with this e5 square being controlled, with white having this really nice not outpost, but like I suppose you call it an outpost. A nice, interesting move here. Queen b3. You're putting pressure on this pawn. Again, not so obvious what black's going to do, though. I mean, is there a rook f6? Maybe. d5 probably makes more sense. You're giving away this e5 square, but in chess, you have these moments where both sides have their trumps, right? Okay, black's gonna have this nice what's called a Pillsbury knight, but white's also gonna have the same thing. G4, striking, a common motif in the Dutch. You know, if because black's king really isn't that safe, especially with this f5 pawn being pushed. So, and this is in my style, right? I mean, I want to push the pawns in front of my king because I don't care. So it's interesting here. Okay, Kai Saxi versus Dark Sage again. This was the same game where we didn't have much going on there. So IC5, a good move here. You're forking the bishop and the queen. And it was key here that you went to queen c2, not to hang the bishop. Either way, probably would not have been great. Black would have had the bishop pair. And both of these games look like they're going to be easy conversions. So we're going to have to wait until we get a new game that's maybe a bit more competitive, because both of these games are pretty good. Liam's going to be up an entire night, an entire piece, and it looks like here that Dark Sage is just going to be picking up everything. Not much to think about here. Take either rook, just sack the bishop, and then bring the knight in. So far, it's looking like Ekthroy, Liam Shea, and Lucas the God, all 3 on 2, and probably Dark Sage will also end up being in this top group. But again, I'm very confused by this opening choice, and we'll go back because there is not much more going on in either of the games. I mean, black played the position perfectly, and whenever you play so many tempos on the queen side here, for one, you're wasting tempos developing your pieces, but also it's not so obvious where your pieces even want to go if you were developing them, in my opinion. This bishop doesn't have a great home. F4 is blocked. E3 would be a bad square. D2 is sad because of these squares. In G4, you're running into these King's Indian pawn pushes anyway. I mean, by playing C3, you block the bishop from going here. It was definitely an attempt to play something creative, and I think it did not end well. And Dark Sage finally finishes Kai Saxi off. So our new game, Dark Sage versus Lucas the God. We'll be watching this. He has the Levy Rosman flair, which is good. So we get an Italian with D3. So a quiet game here. Knight f6, castles, castles, bishop g4. So a lot of the time, black tries to include this h6 move just so this isn't possible. But here, like white might play h3, right? A very good understanding from Dark Sage here. Just making it hard for black to play. So here you have two choices. You can go bishop e3 or you can take. This is not so common because maybe now h6 or a6 comes, and also this is a move. Very rich position here, right? So you don't want the knight to take the bishop on b5. Now c3, bishop b6, and it's just a very rich position here. Queen f3, I like a lot. You're just pushing pressure onto this knight. So Dark Sage's idea is to bring this bishop to c2, but maybe it's more accurate to bring this knight here. And a lot of the time in these positions, the rook comes to e1, this knight comes here, and the knight comes to g3. Or maybe you just want to put this knight here. But with the knight on g3, let's say if we teleport the knight over here, this f5 square becomes really, really nice. But with c6, Lucas the God is trying to somehow break here with d5. And queen f3 might look like it adds some pressure here, but I don't. Okay, h6. We'll see what he does. If he takes. The structure's ruined, but black has the bishop pair. It's not so clear what white's playing for here. So I like black's position, and the computer agrees. This game's still going on. Liam is really dominating in this one. But here's the first real think from Dark Sage here. I'm sure he's wondering whether or not to give away this bishop pair for this damaged structure. I would not at all. I think this would be a bad decision. Bishop b3, I think is a good. Uh, Not sure if I like bishop e3, but d5 comes finally. There's no pressure with the rook on e1 with onto this e5 pawn, so there's no reason not to try it. If I was black or if I was white, I would be a little bit concerned here. I probably would not take. All right, and it looks like this game is over. We've got a new game up. Put an arrow, or we got Ekdor versus Kai Saxi coming up as well. Let's look at this one. So now it's Zachariah playing for something here. So came from a King's Indian, started with like a modern thing, but turned into a King's Indian with E3, H3, and G4. Played this against Josh Pruitt. Very, very fun line. E5 is strong here. And essentially, White has to reconcile with the fact that he did play this E3 move. Normally in these lines, the bishop wants to come here. So maybe this is a little bit inaccurate. But again, I'm being picky because I played this opening. Bishop G2 and castles. This should hang this pawn. So looks like a little bit of failed opening from Zachariah, unfortunately. But this game though still has a lot of my interest here. So black's bringing the rooks into the middle of the board. The knight's finally being developed, and this e3 pawn's very, very weak. Now this e5 pawn is not much stronger, but I'm very suspicious here. Okay, c4 would be met with bishop c6, so I'm not sure if that's a super strong idea. Maybe bring the rook over here. Maybe slide the queen over here just to hit this. Not so sure. White's position aesthetically is not very good. There's just a lot of stuff going wrong. A3 looks very, very slow. I don't see the point of A3. Yeah, I'm going to struggle to come up with a plan for white here, but also black has to come up with something active to do, and I think that starts with something like queen e7. Okay, knight c5, but the knight isn't really, it's not really hitting anything. Now you have to be careful to move the queen. That would be a bad mistake. So queen e7, and I think black's going to enjoy some slight advantage here with the structural weakness and white's plans not being obvious. Black just needs to be careful for this f7 pawn. So let's go back to this game. So the pawn wasn't taken. c6 was played, and this allows white to probably equalize again. I would probably go for b3, bishop b2. You don't mind the queen trade. There's nothing you can really do. I don't think white's attacking or black's attacking chances with the queens on the board are very amazing. But b3, bishop b2. I mean, it feels weird because he played e3 in the opening, but e4 I'm sure is also a good move. Just fixing this pawn here because you never ever, if it was possible in the King's Indian, want to allow black to play this e4 move and have both of these bishops stare into your queen side and wreak havoc. If you're really a fighting player like Ekdor is, I mean, he might try something like queen e2, but it just makes your position very funky. And I'm not a big believer in that. I like black's position a lot, but I am a King's Indian player. So yeah, b3, bishop b2, bishop a3 also possible. Looks like Zachariah, this is going to be a very rich game, but this is also a very confusing one. So we have some action here. So looks like the knight was pinned and we lose the pawn, and suddenly Peter's giving 1.3, but this looks like much more for black. I mean, all of these weaknesses, a very nice move here. I like this move a lot. Just adding more pressure. You're going to win the pawn no matter what. Of course, there's this check, but who cares? This pawn is doing very, very well here. Okay, we're fighting here. We're fighting. And white needs something really active. Like, okay, rook b8, but honestly, after rook c7, I don't see what the rook's doing. Here, you're trading. Maybe this even worked. But yeah, this looks bad. Black has two passers and has completely transformed the position into something that should probably win here. Now, if white was to somehow save this into a draw, how would it happen? I don't know. What would Magnus do? I don't know. This looks pretty putrid. I think black's got this in the back. Back to Ekdoi versus Kai Saxi. So eventually, yeah, in these King's Indian structures, you want to break away at this structure, especially if Sakurai is being so aggressive here. So this pawn's hanging, but this pawn's hanging. We got lots and lots of complications here. The computer says it's equal, but this is hard to say it's equal. This looks dangerous. And this is check. Okay, so we take and take. And this is probably going to fizzle out into something that's very interesting. And it's going to be very interesting, very particularly. King h2. Black should take the queens off, though.